Mark Folk, and welcome back to night 2 of Lessons from the Trail. And last night we really Barry shared his story, and we had a good hour and a half talk about walking with God, hearing God's voice. Tonight, one of the lessons that we've learned over the years is to pray about everything. And today we've been praying. This afternoon we actually had some, I don't know what the right word is. We called it malaise or funk, and we couldn't really understand what was going on. So we began to pray and seek God, and we have changed our topic for the night out of that prayer time. So that's one of the lessons that we've learned over the years, is to hear God and listen to His voice. And so that's what we're going to do. So tonight Tim's going to be sharing his story, and we're going to be really talking about how does a man lead, or how does a man serve God when he feels disqualified. And we've all been a part of, I think we all feel disqualified, really.
Certainly,
right?
at times.
At times. And anytime we sin or fail, we feel disqualified. But I guess one of the lessons we've learned, and some of the things we've gone through with men, and even in our own staff over the years, is divorce. And, I grew up as a Baptist minister's son, and I will have to say that my understanding and my belief about divorce was, it's bad, and the people that are involved in it are bad. I'm being as simple as I can. And I really built kind of a judgment to people that were divorced, or, why are they divorced? They're really not following God's will. And I actually had to repent of that this afternoon during my prayer time, is that I had judged people because of divorce. But actually, in the years of working with men, as we all have, and walking with them, is that I have disqualified men based on divorce. And that's not the only disqualification that men feel. And so I think we're going to talk about that, because it really is a big issue with men, and particularly that go through divorces or other issues in their lives, and that they don't feel like they can be used by God anymore. And that's just simply not true. So we hope this will speak to you. It's a lesson we have learned and are still learning. And so I want to ask Tim just kind of begin by sharing some of your story, Tim, or sharing your testimony.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Mark. Honestly, I've not really been looking forward to this, but just feel like that God has some things for us, for me tonight, and so I kind of want to share. If you were here last night, that Mark said, "Hey, I'm on," So anyway, but obviously, you're not going to hear everything, but just kind of a little bit of backstory. I like to say it this way, that I began going to church 9 months before I was born. So in other words, I was raised in the church. Was born in Idaho. Anybody out there born in Idaho? Okay, I don't meet too many people. But anyway, I was born there, and my dad worked as an engineer out at a research facility out there. And I had the opportunity to live in different places of the country. I lived in Virginia and Georgia and Illinois. Graduated from high school in northern Illinois, western Chicago suburbs, and then I went to a Bible school in upstate New York. Let me back up a little bit. So my spiritual journey began probably when I was about 6, 7, somewhere around in there. And I just remember being in church, Sunday school class, where I think I had done something and I got corrected for it. And I remember very vividly having this thought that, I did something wrong. Oh, that's why Jesus died. Oh, yeah, okay. And then the next process that I can remember was, he's offered forgiveness for that. Well, I'm in. Kind of like you. Why would I want to go to hell? I mean, okay, yeah, we joke about it, but really, come on, guys. And so that was just simple as that. I do do recall not long after that where I remember God convicting me of, well, you need to tell people that you've made this decision to follow me. And it was actually at church service, and there was an opportunity to receive Christ, and I'm going, well, I already have, and God's saying, well, you need to go let people know. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, well, God, yeah, I think I do, but how about next week? You know, and I figured, well, that would give me the courage. You know, I could work up the courage, you know, to make this public, I guess. And you know, I totally forgot about it the whole week. Next Sunday rolled around, I had totally forgotten about it, and came to the end of the service, and it's like God kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, well, Tim, it's next week. And I'm like, no, I haven't had time to work up the courage. But I said, okay, I said I was going to do it, okay, you know, so I went and made my profession in Christ public, and was baptized shortly after that. I didn't know there was a whole lot more to walking with God than that. Of course, I was young at the time. You know, I didn't really know much more. But I do remember I would talk to God about all kinds of things. You know, worries, concerns, fears. You know, tests. You know, grades, all kinds of things. And anyway, but so that was kind of my early decision to follow Jesus, and I was not, you know, one that went out and pushed every boundary out there. I mean, I pushed some boundaries, but for the most part, I was what you might call a good kid, and so I go to Bible school. Prior to that, I had been accepted to go to Georgia Tech. But I changed plans, and I remember talking to my dad and saying, you know, I think I'd like to go to this Bible school, and he was like, fine. So, well, you've already been accepted to Georgia Tech, so why don't I make some phone calls? And fortunately, I had an uncle at the time that was a Georgia senator, and so that made a phone call, got that taken care of, and so I was put on the next year to go to Georgia Tech, which is what I did. And you know, while I was there, made a lot of good friends. God did a lot of cool things, and I felt like that what God had for me was to go work as an engineer. That was going to be my mission field. And so I took a job down in South. It wasn't my place, you know. I really wanted to live, you know, in the West somewhere because, well, I started off in Idaho. My dad had a love for the West, and we would often go back camping, backpacking, and so, you know, I just loved it. You know, I was like a wild one out in the woods, you know, just put me out there and I'm at home. So, you know, I'd hoped to maybe land a job in Colorado, but it didn't happen. And instead I ended up in Florida. Very different than Colorado. But that's it. I remember thinking, I'm going down there, then there's going to be two things. I'm going to learn how to dive, get my open water certification, and I'm going to either get a convertible or T-tops. And so I got my open water certification, and I got a Camaro with T-tops, which I enjoyed for a number of years until I started having kids and trying to get kids in the back of the Camaro. And the car seat didn't work too well, so I had to go. Here came the van. So anyway, I met my wife down there in Florida. We got married, began to raise support, joined Campus Crusade, and then eventually, you know, moved to Little Rock to join Family Life, ministry to families. I remember one of the gentlemen, actually is here tonight again, shared after our discussion on this that, you know, the idea that, you know, life is about relationships. Well, as I said last night, I was like, well, you know, that's the same thing that I would say. Is life is all about relationships. First of all, your relationship with Jesus Christ. Secondly, your relationship with your immediate family. Then others. And, you know, your relationship with God needs to be in order, and then those on down the line. And I remember as I stepped into ministry there, that the things that would burden me, I'd find myself crying when I read a story about a family falling apart or relationship falling apart. And I just, why am I crying? You know, what's the deal? But I had a heart and a passion for that, so I joined Family Life, and loved it. In the process, I was there for 9 years, and then ended up moving to Colorado to work with a ministry to men, different than New Wilderness Adventures. Then that really didn't pan out, and I ended up working in fund development for Crew, which is now Crew, and did that. In the process, God gave me 3 awesome kids, and 3 girls, 3 boys.
That's 6, by the way, Tim.
Three more.
What'd I say?
You
You said 3. There's 3 more, I think.
3 girls, 3 boys make 6.
Okay, 6. I'm not sure. I have to go back and look
Hard
at
to
this.
keep track.
I messed this thing up.
At
Anyway,
a point, it's hard to
6.
keep track. We understand.
Okay. Thanks for correcting. I don't know what I said. All right, so 6 total kids.
Awesome.
Okay.
Oh, is that what it is? No.
Yeah, sorry. You know, as my youngest son would say, back up. Anyway, so get my thoughts back. So six children, and in the process of time, as Barry mentioned, if you saw it last night, you know, I went through a transition again, looking for to get back into ministering to men in that area. I love doing it. Had always had a passion for it. And so the opportunity arose to join New Wilderness, which, hey, voila, here today. Anyway, but in that time frame of making that change and thing, I was taking my oldest daughter back for her senior year of college. And so I had driven with her back to Nashville, and then I driven down to Atlanta to see my family, and then came back to Nashville and kind of had a farewell dinner with her. Really tried to bless her, and then I was going to fly back. I was having a hard time getting a straight answer out of my wife at the time, because I had hoped, and my plan was that we could spend the day together in Denver. At least have a meal or something. She could pick me up and do that. I mean, if you've raised a bunch of kids, man, life can be pretty hectic. And so at that point, we then had 3 in college. And so I thought, well, great, we're going to have more time together, because my second daughter had just started her freshman year, had a son in college, and then my oldest daughter was, you know, her senior year. And so that was kind of my hope. Honestly, you know, there were things in the marriage that, you know, I wished would have been better, and things like that. But and now you kind of know where I'm going with this, right? Okay, so anyway, I didn't know exactly what my arrangements were, and I said, hey, you know, if it ain't going to work, I can, you know, call my son. He can come down, and he said, hey, we can go. There's a bike race up in Fort Collins, and you know, we could go do that and hang out. And Cabela's had just opened up a new store, and I said, well, let's go to Cabela's. You know, I mean, well, this will be good if, you know, but I prefer to spend time with her. But if it didn't work, okay, well, and then maybe she could meet us over in Estes Park or something and get me home. When I landed, I texted her, as I always do every time I would land, and say, hey, I'm here, or I'm here now, or whatever it is. And then I get this phone call. And the phone call simply says, I got the kids, and I'm heading to Alabama. I'm like, doing what? Well, I had all kinds of emotions. I was hurt, I was angry, I was confused, and I didn't know what to do. Trying to make a long story short, basically the bottom fell out. I mean, it was the worst thing for me that could happen, because, as I mentioned earlier, my heart and passion is for relationships. That's how God's burdened me, and I wanted with everything in my heart for, you know, to have a good family, good marriage.
Sure.
And that's what I wanted more than anything. And as I learned something new, I'd try to put it to use. And I had a lot of things I had to learn, by the way. But hey, I know we all do. If I'd known what I know now when I was 22, well, hey, you know, don't we all wish that? But nonetheless, yeah, the bottom fell out for me. And I found myself alone in a house that had been bustling with noise and chaos and kids and activities, to silence. I found myself in a place where the Christians around me really didn't know what to do. I understand because I've been there. It's like you want to point blame. Okay,
Sure.
well, who's at fault? Hey, something happened. Somebody's to blame here. But who is it? Well, you're the man. Well, of course it's going to be you then. I felt like I was willing to own up and, hey, I want to do whatever I could, I did a bunch of things. I won't get all the details. But as I mentioned earlier, as we were talking about this, sometimes God gives us a wake-up call. And those are important. If God gives you a wake-up call, man, you need to pay attention to it. But I felt like that my call was not a wake-up call, it was a mayday call. It was like, this plane's going down. You've got a certain amount of time, but it is going down. And that's exactly what happened. Obviously, a lot of questions. I think the first, that was on a Saturday, and that Sunday afternoon, I didn't go to church. I just can't go, Didn't feel like there was anybody that I could, I did call Mark and the guy Greg, and I think, I don't know if called you, Barry, but just, hey, I want to let you know where I am, what's going on. And I called a few other people just to let them know what was going on. But that was about it at that point. Again, I know who I could trust, and I knew, hey, I've been on the other side of the fence. As you were saying, Mark, where it's like, oh man, I don't know how to deal with this. So a lot of the questions I dealt with was initially I felt like, okay, God, well, I guess ministry's done. Where my heart is, I guess it's over, So I need to go find a job somewhere, do something, and wrestled with those things. Literally was on the floor, face down, and just crying out to God. Yeah. And sometimes, we say God speaks. Well, God spoke to me. It wasn't anything audible, but boy, I sure knew it was God. He said, Tim, get up and get on with your life. And I'm like, what? And I kind of laughed and chuckled a little bit. And I said, well, God, aren't I disqualified? I'm done. Don't I need to go find a job? And he said, Tim, no. You think it's over. I'm going to tell you it's just getting started. Wow. I needed to hear those words. I can't say that at that point, I got up and ran off and life was, life's been peachy since then. No. I'm just saying I hung on to those words. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. There are times I felt more confident. There are times I'm like, what? Give me another, tell me again, somehow confirm this in some way. One of the things, again, as we talked about, I think there's a lot of us, we've made mistakes. Some of our own choices, things that we've done. And sometimes there's things that have been done to us. And we feel like, well, God, I'm done, I guess. I just need to go off and figure out another thing to do in life or whatever it is, or with this heart or this passion, or maybe in ministry. Maybe you had a ministry in the church, maybe you had something else. You had hopes and dreams, and then, maybe you made a mistake, or maybe this happened and this happened. We think, okay, well, it's over with. Let me tell you, I think I'm speaking for God here, and he's saying, that's a lie. That's the enemy. And it doesn't mean that, because what I do think is if you want to become available for God to then use you, and talk about legacy. And one of my years back, I ran across Psalms 112, and it says, how joyful are those who fear the Lord and delight in obeying his commands. His children will be successful everywhere, and a generation of godly people will be blessed. Well, it was, I had all my kids at home at that time, and so I challenged them. I said I'd give them $20 if they would memorize this song. I only had one that got the $20, but I memorized it, and my oldest son, memorized it. But anyway, the Lord brought that back to mind to me, just in a confirmation of that. Because that's what I wanted. I wanted for my children to be successful and to have a generation of blessed men and women, children, grandchildren. And I felt like, well, that was taken away from me. That just is not going to be in my legacy. It's not going to be in my history. But I felt like God saying, now, do you see where it says those that have been divorced, or those that have committed this sin, or those that, committed a felony, or those that have, done this, then this is not going to happen. No, it just simply says, if you make me Lord, and that's like a capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, okay? And you do what I say, you love my commands. This is what's going to happen. I said, well, I can do that. I'm trying to do that. And then I felt like God saying, well, then, duh, you can have a blessed generation. I said, God, how's that going to work out? And I'm just reminded that God says, hey, listen, I created everything you see. Ain't going to be no problem for me. That actually rhymed. That was pretty good. But anyway, and so, just a lot of things, come to mind.
Let me squeeze in a little bit here, Tim, because I want Mark and I to share what's going on in ministry during this, because we're huddling, right?
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, we're doing men's ministry. We're promoting the family. We're trying to reach the family by reaching the men, and here we're dealing with an issue that we never anticipated dealing with, and so here we are. What do we do with this? And so you want to share a little bit on because our knee-jerk reaction, both of us coming out of fundamental church,
Well, it was
Tim is done here.
Maybe he's done. That's right. Initially,
that was knee-jerk.
Yes.
And we realized, fortunately, we took our time.
Yes.
And there was not any immediate response. Okay, Tim, just step back. Let's pray about this.
Yeah.
So you want to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah. Well, we want to love on Tim first of all, and then really it was kind of I kind of think of it back to it's like groping in the dark for us, because the natural tendency is for when someone gets divorced is you kind of live like lepers. I mean that's really I don't know how to deal with a leper.
You feel that way if you've been through it. You do.
But thankfully God's kind of spoke because of what we learned about the good heart.
Well, that's what we represented.
Right,
we had a chance really to step up.
Yeah, and we need to step up for Tim and for Melanie and for the family, and to love and to offer whatever counsel and wisdom and support we could, and that's what we tried to do. And because certainly we didn't want to be in the position of disqualifying Tim and his heart for ministry and for God. So I think, what we refer to it is we got down in the dirt in the foxhole with you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I remember it was just a few weeks after that we were planning on doing a prison boot camp there in Texas, and I'm like, I was asking, I would like to come. Yes. And I remember he's got a little hesitancy on the phone. This, that. I think Barry chirped in and said, well, come on, And so I went. And of course, I was planning on talking, doing some talks, and realized that, I'll just come and help. And I need to get out of this house, and I need to be with some brothers that I don't need to be here. Which, by the way, if somebody's going through something like that, probably the best thing you can do is just show up, bring a pizza, say, let's go to a movie.
That's good, Tim. That's very good.
You don't have to do anything more than that. I had a friend of mine I mentioned last night that came up from Denver and just showed up and hung out for the night on one of my difficult nights. So anyway, this is funny.
And what we didn't, let me finish, and then we'll turn your list here again. We did get trapped into what you talked about earlier of who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah.
Tim's on our team.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's
right.
That's where our concern is here. You're part of our team, and so as that's probably the best thing that we did, because we did ask you to step back a little bit, just
Yeah.
take some breaths, just because we had to know what was going on. Mark, it took Mark a number of months to understand there, but the grace of God go I. It went in my head immediately. As I shared last night, I was a lousy husband for a lot of years. Okay, and just the loyalty of my wonderful wife, that I could see that, boy, it's just something switch tripped somewhere I could be in your situation. So I acknowledge that very quickly, because what I do in really all my ministry is when I'm talking to guys, because I really truly believe that there, but the grace of God go out. When we go to prison, I could, just something here and something there. I could be that guy sitting in a white suit, in the audience and all. So that's kind of from a ministry standpoint where we were. We had no intention of you ever resigning, but we did want you to take some breaths, but we didn't want to get caught in who's right and who's wrong in the whole thing. This was just something that was going on. We didn't have a as you didn't either.
Probably that's what I needed to do.
We don't.
Again, as I shared earlier, I just felt like God was confirming that, well, no matter what, this is, what I have. But I want to share that going down to prison boot camp. So somewhere along in there, it was like, well, Tim, you get this session, and I'm like, so should I share what's going on with me? So I mean, this was only like 2 weeks into this whole thing. And I was like, Lord, I don't want to do this, but okay. So I get up there, work all the courage I got up, and I just kind of share. Yeah, and 2 weeks ago, my wife just left me, and this kind of thing. And I was expecting the prisoners out there, to be like, oh, wow, Instead, I got these dead stare looks. And it was like, I felt like they were looking at me like going, is that all you got? and I just couldn't help but laugh afterwards, because it was like, God, in a way saying to him, is that all you got? I mean, come on, bring something. Bring something that's really bad, Since that point, I've been able, those guys would tell me some of the things they've been through, and they just feel embarrassed by it. And I said, well, what do you think God would say if you were to tell him that? And, say, well, I don't know. I think he would say, is that all you got? Because, my desk was big enough to cover that one. I got that one covered. And so anyway, but, so I just say publicly, thanks, for y'all's support. I know it was easy, not easy, and I know I was whatever, but one of the things for me is I used to have more answers. Now I have a lot less answers. I was probably a little more cocky.
Yeah.
I'm a lot more humble in that process, and if I just get an opportunity, I'm going to just go after a man's heart. And obviously, I want to say publicly, I am against divorce. I am fully against it. Never would recommend it at all. But I know it happens. Well, duh, it's happened to me, and I know for a lot of you guys out there, it's in your history too. Maybe you got several. That's in your history. It doesn't mean you're done, all right? And I think that's the message that we want to communicate tonight.
It is.
I think of, 2 Chronicles 16:9, the eyes of the Lord roam to and fro throughout the whole earth, seeking those whose hearts are fully committed to him, to be strong on their behalf. What's God looking for? To create a godly legacy. He's looking for men that are willing to fully commit to him. And he'll take your messes. And I remember not too long ago as I was cleaning up a mess after, doing some stuff with men or whatever, and I thought, oh, that's a lot of work. Man, why don't these guys grow up, and quit making a mess? And like God said, reminded me that, if there's, no mess, no ministry.
That's good.
And so God takes the messes in our lives and he creates ministry. That's what he does. He takes the pain that we're walking through and he gives us a platform to proclaim his goodness, advance his kingdom. And so, if you're dealing with a lot of pain, if you just let God have it, he's going to turn it into a platform. You can scream your lungs off we just saw the movie, I Can Only Imagine. I recommend it. One of the things that I saw in that was how a man who turned his life over to Christ, he changed his legacy by doing that. And there was another point that I totally forgot. But God can take those messes. Oh, that's what he did in, what's the guy's name?
Bart Miller?
Bart, yeah.
Bart or his dad? Okay, yeah.
He took the pain and the mess of his life and he's done something big with it. All right? That's God's redemption story, and he wants to do that for all of us.
Okay. Now, you're in ministry,
Mm-hmm.
and you went through a divorce, and again, going back to kind of our, old fundamental Christian faith, that would, in a lot of churches, a lot of other ministries, it really does. I mean, we've seen it. We know
Sure,
ministries
sure.
where
Yeah.
guys are
You're out of here.
disqualified, and we've seen it happen. You did take a step back, and and it took a while for you to personally feel right,
Yeah.
good,
Oh, yeah.
well to minister, but the one thing that, as I was saying earlier to you, is that what I watched, what I saw happen was that your constant heart to serve God and to seek Him in everything, in every decision, in every hardship, through this whole process, and this real deep desire to stay close to God. And, because of that, God has, what to the amazement of maybe a lot of people, is God has used you and is ministering through you, to men. Now, when New Wilderness started, for me personally, it started out of me seeing all these divorces around me of people in my age group, my peers. And I was like you, we were weeping because of all these broken marriages. And so when that hand grenade went off in our midst, so to
When
speak,
the bomb went off. Yeah.
I don't want to say it was ironic, but it was like, okay, what's this about, Lord? But I think for us, walking with you through that, but for me is what I'm saying, and I think saying to other men out there who've been through divorce, you might not be in full-time ministry, but maybe you've been a deacon in your church, or maybe your heart is to serve God, and you've been told you're disqualified. What I'm saying is that God uses the broken people to serve. He does.
Oftentimes, he's got to before he can really use you.
Yeah. And you've been broken.
Out of our
I
pain,
mean,
yeah.
I've watched you break and break and break and break.
Yeah.
And
right.
the pain in that is just for all of us, but for particularly few. And I know those men out there that are hurting and pain and angry. I just met a man, or talked to a man the other day who has been through a divorce, and he was in ministry and in church, and he's angry. He's angry about the divorce, but he's angry because he was disqualified from continuing to serve God, quote unquote, in his positions, and so I think what we discovered today in our prayer is that really we were going through the list of the men in the Bible, the disciples, the apostles, and the men God used. I mean, really, I think we said this last night even, they were, thieves, betrayers, knuckleheads, you name it.
Yeah.
And,
Murderers, yeah.
and God used,
Yeah, a lot of murders in
murderers.
Yeah.
God
you know,
redeemed.
And God didn't just redeem them, He used them as, because they turned their hearts to Him. They were radically transformed, okay? And but what we say, they were even still trying to, vie for position in the kingdom to the last minute. But God still used them, and
That's good.
because they were willing to serve Him.
That's good.
And so I think for those men out there that have gone through something, it may not be divorce, it could be some other issues, because we hear all the time men feel defeated because of sin in their lives, sins or mistakes or divorce. And I'm here to tell you that's just not
That's
true.
why Jesus came.
Yeah.
Was to forgive us and to set things right. And yeah, you might say, well, you know, I had the salvation experience, and then I've done all these things, and all these things have happened to me. True, but when Jesus died, he died for all those things. Doesn't give you an excuse or reason to do it. But anytime you submit yourself to him, you know, and say, okay, God, your way, not my way, whatever you have, and align yourself with him and his purposes, then I think you can just hang on for the ride, because God's like, hey, I'm looking for men like that. That's the kind of men I'm looking for. That I want to impact this world, advance my kingdom, and leave a godly legacy behind. And that's all it takes. That is all it takes. It's not what you've done, and it's not even the great accolades the good things you've done. It's is your heart submitted and committed to him, and are you willing to to follow him no matter what. You do need to take some time to step back and reflect, ask the hard questions, seek counseling. You know, I did those, and I still continue to ask a lot of the hard questions. You know, maybe I need to quit, but you know, and allow yourself to, you know, submit yourself to other men. I remember actually that was on a Saturday. When I came home and the house was empty and she told me she was leaving, she was already gone. That Tuesday morning, in my area, I've met with pastors and other Christian leaders in the county. It's kind of an ongoing thing, you know, for many years. And so the day before that, again, I was kind of reminded, you know, my calendar comes up and says, oh, you got the Tuesday lunch with the pastors. And I felt like God saying, okay, well, tell them what's going on. I'm like, no, God, you know. And like, okay, you know, all right, at least I'll go, you know, and we'll see how it goes, you know, kind of thing. And so I walk in there that Tuesday morning, and we meet at the YMCA, and to this day, and I've been going to this meeting for nearly 20 years, okay?
Wow. Yeah.
I have never seen that many men.
They were all
there. I walked in, and like I was the last one in, and I go, oh no, God, no. And it was obviously that he had orchestrated this. And it's like, well, Tim, you're going to back out now? And I'm thinking, I want to. But so I shared. I just shared openly. And
that's good.
It'd be interesting to have this kind of a conversation with them. I really haven't had with too many of them. I mean, a couple of them, yes. There was one in particular that reached out to me, and shout out to him. I appreciate when I got the papers. You know, you get that little notification, you know, in the post office says you've got something from the state of Alabama. You know, it's like, oh, whoopee, you know, I know what that is. And I didn't know it was coming. I got forewarned by somebody else. You know, that's the only way I knew that, you know, that was coming. And so he was willing to go down to the post office with me, and you know, basically stand there while I took that one, so to speak. And I did make a little video, you know, when I did, they said, why are you doing this video? I said, I don't know, because I want to make a record of this thing. And so I took a little video, and I said, okay, you know, so there's the divorce papers, whatever. And so I said, and so what Satan has meant for evil, God's going to use for good. And I'm saying this by faith, okay? Because, and I did that. I needed to do that, and I needed to make a public statement because I didn't want to go back on that one. And so I don't know. I should show that movie, but I still got the little video. But yeah, if you know, we just want to encourage men and. Absolutely. I was thinking about this too in light of this the idea of responsibility, and I've always wondered, okay, I'm supposed to be responsible. I mean, so again, asking the hard questions, you know, where did I screw up? What could I have done differently? And just as I was flying here, you know, for this, and I asked God again that, and he took me to John 17, and where Jesus, in his, we call it his priestly prayer, and he was kind of praying like, okay, you've given me these people, and I've taught them, and I've done what you've asked me to do, and I'm turning them back over to you. And he's praying actually for us, and for them, and then he says, Jesus said, but I lost one. Interesting. And so I was thinking about that in light of responsibility, and I just looked up what's the definition of responsibility, and the word accountability, being accountable, and so I thought about, well, am I accountable for what happened to me? And in thinking of what Jesus went through, and I thought, okay, God, yeah, let's just kind of go through that. And I was like, okay, God, I did this pretty good, and didn't do this so good, and did good on this, and I really sucked on that one, and I lost her. So I take responsibility. Now, taking responsibility doesn't mean that you're at fault, that it is your fault, but as men, we are to be responsible, and we are to give an account. And if that means this was good, this was bad, I lost this one, or I ran this one off. We need to own up to it and take responsibility. And I think when we do, then God can do something with that.
It's huge, Tim. It's huge.
It's good. Your story fits perfectly into what we're talking about, a disqualification, but I just can't. I got to interject something at this point. I'm not talking to the camera. Any of you guys, I got a lot of Facebook friends that I met you in a prison unit somewhere in Texas. You were a brother in white. You had on a white suit with a TDCJ, with a Department of Corrections number, on your badge, and the word offender on your badge. Let me tell you, it seems that our sins that become public, we want to make them worse than the private ones. And so, but that's not the way Jesus sees them. It is given to us so well that Jesus died for all the sins, the public ones, the private ones. So, you hardly listen to the news without some mayor or senator or something with a public sin. He got pulled over drunken driving or whatever, or inappropriate relationships with women or staff people that they had power over. But that's just wrong. It's just wrong. Jesus died for all the sin that we have. It doesn't okay it. It doesn't justify it. That's all I'm saying. But if you look at Jesus' attitude toward divorce, the woman at the well, he didn't condemn her. Just said, believe in me and sin no more.
Don't do it
cut it
anymore.
out. But no condemnation. The adulterous woman was about to be stoned. The same way Jesus gently handled that, and so that's our example. Jesus is our example. That's what I'm trying to say here on how you handle things. We love people, regardless of what's going on in their lives, and things that they've even if they are responsible, even if they did make bad decisions.
Don't want to leave you where you are, but I'm not going to run from you.
So we've got to step up, and I think you went over something very quickly that I think very powerful, to just show up. In this, when you don't know what to say to somebody, you don't know how, just show up, or
you don't have to know what to say. Just show up. Just
be there. Jump in the foxhole. I think that's the phrase you used last night for me. In that. So that's really good, and thank you for sharing. I know how hard it was.
Yeah.
We really do. We do. But I know how God's redeeming that story, because when we share with men at a boot camp, or whether it's inside prison or not, you're still talking to half your audience, and often more than half your audience. You're talking, we're going to disqualify those guys, not let them come,
or say that God can't use them.
We've got to diffuse that you're done for God using you, because another thing, divorce is not necessarily a sin. We just blanket that. There are some circumstances that where it isn't. God doesn't like it. We don't need to. We need to speak against it, and pastors have such a hard time preaching against it, because he's talking to half his congregation, basically.
That's a tough one.
And but we've got to be courageous in that area, and we've got to realize that things happen. That sometimes it's sin, sometimes it's a sin of other people.
Right.
That cause us to go down some of these things, And so, but just because it's public, it's no worse than our private sin. And it's just, that's the bottom line here.
Guys, so in trying to convey, some lessons to some help, I think keying off to, again, being a witness to this, not only in your life, Tim, but in other men that I've seen go through divorces, go through, terrible, or other sins. What, they can go one or two ways. They can completely go off the reservation, off the rails, and leave the church, isolate themselves. We talked about isolation last night because of disqualification, self-condemnation, guilt, fear, being exposed. And all those things push them away from God.
Anything that's pushing you away from God, guys, that's...
And it's really the easy thing to do. It is difficult. It is a hard thing to do, to ask the hard questions, to pursue God in that, through the condemnation, through the guilt, to take responsibility. Those are difficult things to do. And you know what? Quite honestly, you don't feel like it, right? You just, when that stuff comes at you,
Kaboom.
It just crushes you you don't feel like it.
The best way I describe it is like when I was a kid, I used to love to play football, and we played, tackle without pads, and, good old days, I guess. And I'd be running with the ball, and somebody, the way we tackle a lot of times, you just stick your foot out there, and, he'd be like, whoo, boom, I'd land on the ground with the ball. And, this wasn't any nice little AstroTurf, it's like, sandlot out, hard, soil. Man, it would knock the breath out of me. So when it first happens, you think you're going to die. And, you just can't breathe. And that's the best way I know how to describe how it felt, is that, you just get the breath knocked out of you, and you can't breathe, you can't talk, you can't, you think you're going to die. And if you could just get yourself to breathe, but somehow you just can't do it, and finally your diaphragm relaxes and you can breathe.
That's good.
And
Metaphor.
but a lot of times that's exactly what happens, and some of us I think sometimes you can get stuck in that place. Man, that's just right where the enemy's, he's got you. Satan wants to take you out, especially if you felt like you were, if you were a warrior in God's kingdom.
Wow.
And you were, advancing, then he'll target you. And in today's culture, let me tell you, marriage, relationships, confusion in masculinity, what that is. Man, those have got the men in this culture, neutralized. And I want to see that changed.
Yeah. Well, I would, I want to share also just a little bit more about Tim, because one of the things that what I've watched in Tim, again, is him pursuing God, staying close to God, staying in the Word, serving, and what God has meant for evil, and what that prayer that he meant for good is, and Tim, he does it, not a lot of people know this, but Tim is ministering to several men in his own home who are broken, disenfranchised, who have gone through tough times, both in prison, right, and other issues, and he's discipling them one-on-one in his home, living with him. So God's using him, and we've been a witness to that, watching God use him as we've seen other men.
Rooms to use.
Yeah, well, you had some rooms to use.
Anyway.
But anyway, I think we want to make sure that if you're out there and you feel disqualified because of some sin, but you have a heart, you've had a heart for God, to serve God, is that you need to reach out to Him. You need to pursue Him, seek Him out, and try to find a place where you can be with God and turn yourself over to Him and turn your heart over to Him, because He can use you. He will use you. We were talking about David, the sin of David with Bathsheba. But yet, what was said about David when he died?
He's a man after God's own heart. Not only that, but I love where it says that he was a man that fulfilled his purpose in his generation.
Yeah.
And we need men that are going to fulfill. God needs men. We do, but God's looking for men that are willing to step up and say, I want to fulfill my purpose. And God's saying, okay, we're going to do it in this generation, and we need some men to rise up. And maybe you don't know Jesus personally, and you just haven't been popping into this. Oh man, we want to introduce you to Jesus. and want you to know him, and we want you to know that he can do something big. He can give you an awesome legacy, and you think the legacy you got is your felony record and your mistakes and your broken relationships, and you think that's what your legacy is going to be. Nah, you turn that over to Jesus Christ. Let me tell you what, he'll take that and he'll turn that into something incredibly awesome, because he can and he wants to, but you gotta give it to him, and you gotta be willing to turn your life over to him, submit it to him, and let him do it. Just again for me, I mean, I can't tie a nice little neat little bow around all this. I'm still wrestling in the middle of a bunch of stuff, and when we saw this movie, kind of asked each other, how'd you see the movie? Well, it was kind of hard for me. I think I cried through half of it, Why? Because of broken, difficult relationships in my life. So I'm still, I'll say it this way, make a claim here, by faith, moving forward, that God's going to do something. As I mentioned, Psalms 112, there's plenty of other places in Scripture where talks about that. I may be joining the rest of those in Hebrews chapter 11. When it gets toward the end, it said, "And they believed God and trusted Him and did not see it in their lifetime." I may not. I sure want to, but I may not. But that's okay. I guess I'm okay with it right now. I'm just saying, I still struggle, and I'm not like, just blissfully bebopping along, and a nice little bow around everything. But for the most part, as long as I hang on to the truths that we've talked about, some days I do better than other days. Some days I need reminders. Then I can look forward to what God has for me the rest of my time here on earth, and know that I'm ready. Let's go after it. Let's advance God's kingdom.
Tim, will you take a moment and pray for those guys out there that are struggling with this? Will you pray for them?
Father, my heart goes out to any man or a woman that's out there that in any way their heart's broken, they're hurting, they're angry, got broken relationships. Father, whether it's a spouse, a child, a friend, and they're asking you, Father, they're crying out in desperation. Father, hear their prayer. Hear their prayer. Father, give them hope. Give them some hope right now. God, let them know that how much you love them, that you were thinking about them when you died on the cross, that there's nothing that they can do that can hamper your love or your forgiveness. All they need to do is accept that. Father, if there's some men right now that just need to say, God, I accept your love. I accept your forgiveness. I want the life that you have for me. Father, maybe there's some men that they have, and they've just wandered away, made some mistakes. Get into stuff, man. There's so many traps out there in relationships, in pornography, and addictions, and things that we use to cope and try to deal with our pain that have ensnared us, Father. And you have said that you came to set the captive free. Father, set some captives free tonight. Ask God to do that, and He will. He will. You've said that you can break the strongholds. And as I understand what a stronghold is, it's a lie that we believe. And we're held captive by what? A lie. God, expose some lies. Bring truth in. These men's hearts and these men's lives. Surround them with some other guys, some other things. Lord, they could find some things in their area, some people, and some guys will jump in the foxhole with them. Father, maybe there's some guys listening that, they're like, Well, that's not where I am. Well, then you probably know somebody who is, okay? So go find somebody. Ask God to show you somebody. You just need to jump in the foxhole with them. Let me tell you what, it's going to be uncomfortable. You're not going to know what to say, what to do. God, just give these men the courage to do that. Father, raise up an army of men that are fully submitted to you, that have a heart and a love for you, that are willing to say, I'll align myself with you, and we're going to push back the kingdom of darkness, and we're going to leave legacies of lives that are changed and impacted by the gospel, and it starts right here, right now. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Our closing thought, Mark, if you'll allow me before you close it out. And again, we believe in church discipline. We do. We believe in biblical discipline. There are examples where the church has got to step in and intervene. So don't let the enemy twist and pervert what you've heard here tonight. We're not saying divorce is okay, or that any of that get involved in a felony conviction, a felony crime is not okay.
Or an affair.
Don't hear anything that we're not saying here. But what we're in the area of disqualification, and in Tim's heart is where we went to Tim's heart, not to the action, not to the event. Okay, so I just want to encourage you, church leaders, and to go to the heart of the issue, the heart of the person, in these kind of situations, because they are difficult, and they do require attention, and it is messy. We talk about that a lot. The Christianity is messy. It's not just sweet, the bow tied around it always. So just want to try to disarm the enemy in you hearing something that we're not saying here, okay? Because we do believe in what Scripture says.
Yes.
But we also believe it's not rules and regulations, it's heart issues. And we go to the heart of issue. What's behind the action, not the action alone by itself, okay?
Yeah. Too often we hide behind the rules.
Yeah.
That's the easy way. Yeah, that's easier.
Well, the most important thing is we have learned, and then what is true is that Jesus is the Redeemer of all things. And He doesn't just mean to redeem us, He means for us to join Him in His work, to be glad and joyful in it. And that did not end, right, with our sin. And He redeemed that on the cross and His resurrection. And so that is something that I just want to, again, reiterate to you men out there that really, right now, you're locked, you're paralyzed in your disqualification. You don't even feel like you can move. Cry out to God.
Yeah.
As Tim said, get on the floor, get on your face and cry out to Him. He'll answer. He'll be there. You're needed. You are. You're needed in your area of influence. So we just thank you for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow night with questions that men ask, right? Yeah. Unless God changes things again. The Holy Spirit tomorrow changes things again. That's our plan. So thank you for being with us.
And I just want to say, God is so good that He can take the worst and turn it into good.
Thank you, Tim.
Good night.
Good night.
All right. Look at that, we got done early.
We cleared